you think people will be like, who's this dipshit wearing his glasses at night?
Probably. So,
You take a right, yeah?
yeah. No, left. If you want to go to the Riverside, you take a left. Here.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see shit. Are we good to start?
Yeah, we're good to start.
Mr. Phares Kariuki,
Yes.
this is the second time you're on the CoffeePump podcast.
Yes.
In a very different setting.
In a remarkably different setting. Being driven around like I'm a politician.
I have to apologize because I was supposed to get a G-Wagon today. Or the latest Prado.
I'm not a journalist or an MP. So.
No, me, I wanted to drive. You were just an excuse. And so I ended up having to result in using the same car.
But I understand their perspective.
Yeah, who's this guy with like 7,000 subscribers asking for a G-Wagon?
Not only that, risk. You're going into a showroom and asking for $300,000. Just give me this. Let me hold it for like an hour. I'll be back.
I had Andrew Kibe on my podcast.
That might not always work in your favor.
It's legitimate.
Yeah.
By the way, are we going straight?
Yeah, straight.
So, we've done this before. In fact, if you guys haven't watched Phares was on episode 11.
Yeah.
And maybe I can give a bit of a history of how we know each other.
Yeah, sure.
I work in the tech industry, and Phares was one of the people that sort of mentored me about the cloud business. He's a cloud guru, and I've always come to him and sought advice, whether it's about business, whether it's about life, whether it's about stakes.
Yeah.
That's quite good. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
I know
Happy to
we've
be
had very interesting past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But in general, how have you been? Kinda.
I don't know. I feel like I'm a victim of the Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. Last year was tough. I got clarity towards the end.
And tough in the sense, was it like business tough? Things were just tough in Kenya?
This country of ours. When we were in high school and we read those set books, we read A Man of the People. I remember Chief Nanga and all of these things. And at the time, we read, there was this book, what do we call it? Encounters from Africa.
Yes.
Where we read about different politicians, like the MP who only shows up during the elections. And there was also there was an excerpt from the book. There was an essay called The Man.
Yes.
And this guy managed to break into the president's palace, which had mirrors and crocodiles in the moat and all of this, and kill the president. And eventually he got killed by the president's guards trying to investigate it.
Really?
Encounters from Africa. It was our set book in 2003. And I feel like we've lived through that. We've lived through variations of that. The country is just tough to do business in right now.
Right.
So you kind of just you have to segregate what your experience of the country,
Yes.
what your experience of the business environment, and what is uniform to everyone, and what is peculiar to you. So, for instance, if you're poor at sales, you're poor at sales. Whether or not the economy of the country is doing well, you're poor at sales.
That's on you, yeah.
But you also have facts like the economy has gone to the toilet, and regardless of how good you are, there's sort of like a limit to how far you can go.
Correct. Maybe I can get your opinion on something.
Yeah.
So, we were talking about Kibe. He was on the podcast, and he is very pro Ruto, saying that things have improved from a cost perspective, from a community perspective of business. What's your take on it? I know we work in the tech space, but also one of the notions we complain about is cash flow issues.
Yeah,
but our businesses here just don't want to pay. So
it's an experience I have, and then now it's downstream. So if people don't pay me on time, I can't pay my suppliers on time.
Correct.
Here's what I'll say. I won't dive into that particular opinion.
Yeah.
But what I'll say is this: there's a book by Fernando de Soto Palar on the mystery of capitalism, and he basically goes into Bolivia.
Yes.
And proves that it's nearly impossible to start a business, and I think you needed 23 licenses or something.
In Bolivia?
In Bolivia. And this forms the basis of the World Bank Doing Business report. And Kenya sort of follows the letter of the World Bank doing business report, but completely shits over the spirit of it. Shits on the spirit of it. Here's the challenge. You don't need to tell me when the economy is doing well.
Yes.
It's not something you communicate to me. I can see it.
Correct.
I can experience it. The money will be in my pocket. Like,
Yes.
if you're talking about like, everyone is complaining. Credit has dried up. All these things have happened. This is the sort of thing that you experience. Nobody needs to tell you it's morning. You wake up, you see the sun.
Yes.
It's the same with economics. When there's money, there's money.
Yes, that's true.
I remember, we are kind of young enough to remember during the Kibaki era when there was an IPO boom and everyone was able to invest in stocks
Yes.
and bonds, and we had this boom of IPOs. Kibaki didn't need to tell us that the stock market was doing well. We experienced it. We put our little coins in the IPOs for Kengen and Safaricom and
Correct.
all these other companies. So I think there's a disconnect. You can't eat GDP numbers. You can't eat GDP growth. There's a liquidity problem in the economy, and that's because the government is over leveraged.
Yeah.
And so the taxes that we experience on a daily basis limit how much money there is to spend in the economy. And so most of the money the government has, most of the money people have.
Sorry to interrupt. We passed your old school.
Yes.
This boy is a Strathmore boy. That's
Yes,
why he's quoting books and references. What was saying to quote Twitter. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, Strathmore is actually very instructive to me.
I think it's formed who you are, to be honest.
Yeah, in several ways. I mean, they were my first employer.
Yeah.
So I had a close relationship with them for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then time passed and I got older, and that changed.
We were talking about
Yeah, so effectively the government has mopped up liquidity from the market. So yes, the fundamentals might be good, but I communicate using analogies. So
Yes.
what comes to mind is somebody who's not had income for 5 years, and then you give them 100 shillings. It doesn't mean that they're suddenly rich.
Correct.
It means that they've not had money for 5 years and now they have 100 shillings, and all that can buy them is some bread and milk. And I wouldn't call that a luxury. And that's kind of where the country is at the moment. We are competing with the government for debt from the banks.
Is it because now you have private sector versus public sector all aiming for the same amount of business, whereas public sector
No. The most important... Okay, so this now goes back to basic economics, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm oversimplifying it.
Yeah.
We tend to think that our own intelligence makes a difference. Like if I'm running a startup and I raise $1 billion, I'll think, oh my God, I'm so smart, I've raised $1 billion. But that's actually an action that's downstream from the US Federal Reserve. So when the economy is struggling, the Federal Reserve will lower interest rates. When it lowers interest rates, money goes seeking opportunities because, this is the zero risk borrower globally.
Yes.
The world's reserve currency. So they lower interest rates, capital. There's this guy called Howard Marks, and one of the papers he wrote during COVID, he was like, if interest rates are low, the rational thing to do is seek growth over earnings. And so capital basically starts seeking any growth opportunity. And so suddenly sitting in Kenya, we'll have tech startups raising $50, $100 million, whatever the amount is.
Yeah.
When the economy overheated and the inflation became chaotic in the US, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates. And suddenly capital went back, because if this zero risk borrower, the global zero risk borrower, is giving you 5%, then me as a startup in Africa, I need to give you 10% plus as an annualized return for this thing to make sense for me. So capital withdrew and people wanted to wind down farms.
Yeah.
And there's a famous aphorism, when the tide goes out, you know who was swimming naked. And so many startups found themselves caught out because the interest rates went up
all of a sudden.
and then you can't raise your next round, but you are running your company banking on the next round.
Yes.
My point is government policy and in particular monetary policy is what determines how we do as a country. And many times when you're struggling as an entrepreneur or a business person, you're downstream from the government policy, which is why a conducive environment to do business is like the most important thing you can do.
And you find we've reached a point where we're no longer conducive in Kenya?
No, Kenya is horrible. We've got a lot of policy shock. I mean, you know, we've got a new, I won't mention him by name. We've got a new Don in ICT. And a lot of the things they're saying make it difficult for people to make long-term investments on internet infrastructure in this part of the world. Tax policy changes very erratically.
Yeah.
Council policy, so this is county policy, changes in a very erratic manner. And all these things have compliance costs. So if, you know, the government says tomorrow that, you know, you need to have, you know, a certain framework for reporting your taxes.
Yes.
You're going to hire a software company, you're going to hire an engineer and all these other things, and an audit firm to ensure that you're complying with this new government policy. VAT policy has changed a number of times over the last 5 years. Almost every single year, we've had a material change to VAT policy over the last 5 years. What people want is a predictable, long-term environment where I can say,
yes,
this is how I'm going to be filing my taxes over the next 10 years. And that doesn't change. It doesn't matter if the taxes are high, by the way.
But as long as you can predict
as well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As long as I know, come 2025, if I'm making an investment, so like a private equity firm has a 10-year tenure for its firm.
Yes.
And so they look at the taxes in the country, the corporate taxes, etc., and they'll say, look, we invest in an asset in this country. When we sell it off after 5-year period or 10-year period, this is the earnings we're going to get. These are the earnings we're going to get. When the government suddenly decides to change that, for the private equity firm that has a return mandate to its LPs, to its funders, this suddenly becomes an erratic environment, and they're like, okay, should we really be investing in this country?
And we've seen sort of a step back from that.
Exactly.
As well, right?
So many times the reason we are not doing well as a country is because we've got all this erratic policy, all these compliance costs, a criminal justice system that does not work for the average business or the average citizen. And people, the thing about it is, people observe this and choose not to invest in this country. There are people who, you know, look past the issues we have, invest, and they make a return. But for the average person who's not invested enough to, because while you're doing this, again, remember, the US is giving 5% on the dollar, zero risk. So you then have to wait. The investors have no responsibility to give us capital.
Correct.
We are the ones who have to show them why they need to invest in this market. And yes, some people will invest and will make a return, but for the country to really take off, you need to have multiples of capital, or multiples of the capital we are receiving right now, for the country to really take off, so that it's easy for you to roll out a bank. It's easy for you to compete with the telcos. It's easy for you to compete with the, you know, in the healthcare industry. So then suddenly you've got this large business environment that attracts a lot of opportunity, employs many people, and that's kind of how you become a middle-income country.
Within that confinement, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're exposed to a lot of the VC space. You're looking at the people who are angel investors, and there are a lot of people who are still very positive in terms of Kenya. They want to open low-cost ISPs. They want to open something in the BFSI space.
Yeah.
You think if you take into account the risks that you've just mentioned, the policies in place, there's still a healthy business environment?
There's a healthy business, but the thing is, what people need to acknowledge. Let me give you an example. Start an ISP in the US.
Yeah.
it's a very different experience from Kenya.
How so? Like,
There's a lot more regulation in terms of how you roll out the cable, trunking, and localized monopolies. So, if I roll out my fiber in, let's say, Ruiru,
and TNT is there or something, you can't really compete.
you can't compete.
Yeah.
So they limit the number of providers.
Whereas here, it's...
But the thing is, there's a lot of the amount of credit available to the citizens is high.
Yeah.
So your customer acquisition costs, because you have this sort of environment where you've got a captive audience, are very low. And then your churn, the lifetime value of the customer is actually longer.
Here, it's not that.
It's not, because here even if you sign a contract with an ISP, you can't adjudicate that contract in court. So when an ISP is rolling out a connection to somebody's home, it'll cost them around $200. They'll be lucky if the customer sticks around for 6 months.
To be honest, like no one, actually saying no one is a blanket statement, but you and I work in that space where you can sign a contract and someone will not adhere to the contract terms.
Yeah.
And even if you take them to court, it'll be years before you get anything in return.
And that is what limits investment. You've actually nailed what limits investments, because do you want to tell me that somebody is going to decide, okay, let me put up a $3 billion investment in Kenya?
Yeah.
And then we'll pray to the gods that, the actors we are partnering with will actually do what they're supposed to do. It doesn't make sense. And so even like on the whole, even for ISPs, if customers could commit to a longer term when signing up with an ISP, the service cost will actually be lower, because every time you're switching ISPs, you're bundling the ISPs with these costs.
Yeah.
The ISPs then need to factor that churn into the cost that they charge you every month.
I remember that in UK as well.
Yeah.
In order for you to go from one network provider to another, you have to abide by the contract rules.
Yes.
There's a deposit that gets eaten into.
Yes.
Hapo hakuna deposit.
Yeah.
By the way.
And I'm not saying that it has to be hostile.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that you have these costs.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you think of the costs. Those are the costs.
I think the Scary is looking at us.
Yeah.
Or is it the camera? Niaje bro? Habari yako? Unaweza ingia? Asante sana. Thank you.
And so, I'm not saying that, a local ISP should charge you if you try and move. No. What I'm trying to bring out is the fact that the local ISP is factoring into its math that you might churn in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever the amount is.
There is that in place, right?
Yes. And so they will charge you. The monthly subscription will include the fact that you might churn.
Oh, you need to park there, sorry. Sorry, we if you guys can't see, Vish is hidden at the back over there guiding us where to park for the lighting. Now, another question I had before we get out and get a coffee. By the way, you're aware of the concept of this show.
Yes.
we drive around looking for coffee.
Yes.
So, Kenya was, for a long time, considered the Silicon Savannah. You have folks like the network providers, actually the content delivery networks, the cloud operators, all setting up bases over here.
Yeah.
Microsoft, Amazon, I believe, has opened offices as well. Do you think that's still going to happen quite actively?
Yeah, because we have a fairly well-educated country when it comes to ICT. Strathmore University was offering IMEs as far back as 1994.
Yes.
I learned computer studies in high school. I mean, the computer studies program for KCSE started in 1995. Nairobi University had imported one of the first mainframes in the 80s. So there was, and then you'd got institutions like JICA with SMASE, and also direct investment into Jomo Kenyatta University that brought a lot of investment into sciences in Kenya in the 80s and 90s. And so we have a very well-educated population, and that has made a huge difference, as well as some of the reforms that were pushed by the IMF and World Bank in the 90s around how the internet infrastructure needs to look. And then we had a very long period of very minimal interference in the sector. And so that we had all the right tools. We speak English, we have a fairly educated population, We have the right regulatory environment.
Yeah.
Everything took off.
So one of my fondest memories of you was, again, it was in regards to this conversation of labor.
Yeah.
Was at the CIO 100 conference in Eneshapai.
Yeah. I don't think I've been to Eneshapai for CIO.
It was a conference.
Yeah.
Where was it? Was it in Mombasa?
Might have been Mombasa.
It was in conference and you were a panel.
That must have been Mombasa.
Was it in Mombasa?
Yeah, that was Mombasa. I think it was Pwani.
It was
no. This
it was CIO in
this
Mombasa.
hotel Sarova.
Sarova.
White Sands.
So to give you a story, you were sitting on the panel with what's the guy of Safaricom called?
George Njuguna.
Yeah. And George Njuguna, the conversation was around the skills of Kenyans and how Kenyans are very appreciated. And in East Africa, we are known quantity for that. But then he was upset that, when Microsoft set up, they just come and the people Safaricom have groomed, they just take them and snatch them away. And he was saying, we train them, they are family, and the question was asked, how much do you pay these guys? And they're like 200, 300,000, but that's not the point. We groom them, we make them ours. And you replied, and your first comment was, there's no pride in poverty.
Yeah.
So if someone is paying you 200,000 and another company gives you $5,000 or $6,000 for that same role,
go. Look, here's the reality. Money is real, and money represents, an exchange of goods and services. If somebody offers you, and this is what I feel a lot of employers have missed in Kenya, if somebody offers you 2 million shillings a month, net of taxes, let's say.
That's a good salary.
You can buy a home in a year. That changes your life.
It does.
Changes your options. Changes how you look at the world.
Yeah.
That's real. What's being offered to you is a bet on an economy you can't control, on employers you can't control, on a mind you may not be able to control. You might get depressed, you might develop a bipolar disorder, you might develop schizophrenia. Like there are all these other things about the future you cannot bank on. Money has a real effect today.
On your life.
And it changes you and gives you more options. Which is why there's an issue right now at NVIDIA, because many of the guys who got stock are now dollar millionaires. And many of them just do not want to work anymore. And others actually enjoy their work and will continue doing their work. And that's fair. But they have choices, they have options. I find it unfair that employers want employees to be beholden to them. Because tomorrow, if Safaricom or any other organization, I don't want to single out Safaricom, it was just that it was brought out, suddenly has financial hardship, they will lay off these employees without thinking.
Correct.
So if loyalty cannot be asymmetric, if you want the loyalty from the employee, do what the governments used to do previously. You're permanent, you're pensionable. Even when the company is struggling, we will figure out how to pay you. We will cut down costs in other parts of the business, but we will pay you. But you cannot shift it to be, loyalty applies only to us. No. And if it applies, if the organization will be selfish, the employees can be selfish and choose, I will go to the person who pays me the most.
That's a very good point.
And, there's, I forget what I think it's a Matthew effect or something. But like in the Bible, he who has more will be given. The biggest signal that you're a good employee is a higher salary, ironically. So people who start earning a lot of money when they're younger consistently signal throughout their careers that they're good employees and consistently get paid more money than people who end up just sort of taking this pain for a while.
I really like that.
Yeah.
That's actually really nice. I want to ask you about AI, but first let's go and get a coffee.
Sure.
So, Phares, while he's shazamming the music, was the first person I tasted Wagyu beef food. Where did we have Wagyu beef?
In Lavington, but it's the same guy who gave you food poisoning.
Hit and miss.
Yeah.
How are you, bro? What would you like?
Flat white.
My ex. We're good? Let's go. Mr. Kariuki.
Yes.
Sorry,
I was thinking about Kikuyu trance.
Kikuyu trance?
Yes.
As in Kikuyu trance music?
There's a guy who... I forget his name.
Wait, just when we're talking trance music, we're talking like the stuff you play at club.
Can I pair my whatever?
Yes, you can.
How do I do that?
Oh yeah, this will be a bit complicated because in Japanese. Okay. I usually use Google Translate.
Yeah, okay, so it's okay. But there's just check out the song Manake. I think he's something focus. He's a Kikuyu who's paired up with some global DJs, and he's a DJ as well, or producer. Yeah.
You've heard it.
You just don't remember it.
Is it that something Mokosa?
No.
Even that one was.
Yes.
Even that was not bad, right?
So it's called Monake. It's by the lady who did the song that blew up, the Kenyan Kikuyu trance song.
Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah, Fully Focus, I think, is his name.
Fully Focus.
Yeah, Fully Focus or something of the sort.
What type of music do you listen to?
How long is a piece of string? I listen to everything. I grew up listening to gospel music. That's all I was allowed to listen to.
What?
My parents were remarkably religious. My dad used to distribute Gideon's Bibles, was a pastor for some time. And so religion was like the end all and be all. And so outside of religion, the only thing I was allowed to do was listen to classical music. And I used to play the piano. And so...
Wait. Where are you throwing all this stuff from? You play the piano?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was certified for a while. It's just been a very long time since I played. And then my music tastes are what you'd call...
Sorry to interject.
Yeah.
Have you been on Rough Road in a while?
Yeah, no.
Have you noticed all this stuff?
I have noticed all of it. It's inevitable. It's inevitable.
It looks nice.
Yeah.
The rent's going to go through the roof, though.
Yeah, it's inevitable. You have the fastest growing town in the country is Ruiru, which is 32 kilometers away from the city center. You cannot have people driving that far for housing, and then people here have... It's inevitable. It's a pressure thing. It's not even Sakaja. It's not a political thing.
Yeah.
It's just the population of Kenya is exploding. People want serviced land. There's a shortage of serviced land. The price of the land here is bid upwards. People will sell that land, and the people who are left will be unhappy. But they get rewarded by the insane valuation of the property here.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, my music tastes are very eclectic.
Yeah. Right now, what's in your playlist? Like,
so today morning I was listening to a hard rock band called Stained. And then when I was done with that, there's a guy who's done a violin remix of a Mzansi house song. So there's a song called Spirit by Questa. There's a violin edition. I was listening to that before I left for this interview. I was also listening to some 90s rap. I have the playlist here. And then I was listening to Nonini as well.
Can we link the playlist in?
I can actually share the playlist of what I was playing.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the description.
I was playing Nonini.
Yes.
I discovered Juakali is a very macabre artist, and many people don't actually listen to Juakali's music.
The thing is,
let me actually do this. Yeah.
Yes.
Let me pull up the lyrics to a Juakali song and read them for your audience.
Okay, so.
And I think even you will be shocked.
We were talking about Juakali on a podcast we did with Tim, former Club Kiboko.
Yeah.
And he went to the same school with Juakali.
Yes, I listened to that, yes. I think it's Shavas Junior, if I remember correctly. Yes. I listened to
you listen to my... Hey, my guy.
I listen.
I thought you just like Vish. You're like, yeah, I heard it.
Yeah.
No, Vish, by the way, the first time we listened to a podcast was my podcast.
To it.
So I've got him on
the only way I can prep for this is by actually listening to the other podcasts. You understand Swahili, yeah?
I do, bro.
So, juzi gari ya mafuta ikaanguka, si waliangalia watu wakiiva kiasi. Nyama choma kila mahali, kachumbari poa, lakini iongezeke kitunguu. wale wamepona wapeleke hosi watatibiwa na madaktari. Like literally he's making fun
yeah.
of people who've just blown up in a tanker accident.
So you know who he reminds me of?
Yeah.
Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
Because Lil Wayne had these rhymes.
Yeah.
Where if you look further into it, and so there's Lil Wayne and what was the other guy's name? Joe
Budden.
Not Joe.
Not Joe Budden.
J. Cole.
J. Cole. Yeah.
They do rhymes like this where there's hidden meaning within it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just straight up words just matching, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Like Juakali, does he still make songs?
He still does. He's just not as prolific as he was in the younger years. It's rap. The music is a young person's game, because that's your market. When people get older, few people actually spend as much time on music and the arts as they age.
Well, yeah. You know, the thing is, I guess I met. So yeah, this is Kenya. We have dipshits driving
like
on the
literally
opposite side
on the wrong side of the highway.
Makende yake sijui anafanya nini katika kazi.
Hazards basically say you've got a right to drive anyway.
Now, speaking of people who sort of stay, the part they pay for themselves changes as they grow up. Is, you know, the guy for Ikonini, Mwafrika?
Yeah.
He came to the data center today, you know?
Yeah.
He reached out, he wanted to collab, he wanted to get an understanding of what the data center does. Mm-hmm. And so he spent time, he was asking questions. And one of my colleagues, you know Vincent, right?
Vincent is cool people.
Vincent is, exactly. And Vincent has a very interesting taste in music. When you see the guy, he's a Kimeru. But Yani used to listen to people like Mobb Deep.
Yeah. Just put another second.
Okay, sure.
You've seen interesting cars?
No.
I saw the calipers on that WRX. I was like, okay.
Vincent was telling me that Moaf used to be a rapper.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. He just didn't do very well in it.
But apparently his songs were very well respected.
Even the other guys on his podcast were all like, one of the other guys, what's his name? I forget his name. One of the other guys who he has with him.
There are three of them. I know what you're talking about. I'm not
was on, like, I think it was Yoja Mahakamani.
Yeah. He's mentioned to me that now, as he transitioned from that into radio and then podcasting, what he realized was you need to be consistent and you need to start posting every day, because he used to do twice a day. Twice a week. But when he started posting every day, splitting it multiple clips, he then grew and was able to sustain a career just by doing YouTube.
Yeah, the algorithm rewards you.
You.
People have the attention spans of nuts.
It's tough when you have a full-time job. I mean, that's even balancing it out. But in order to get there, the other thing is, he was mentioning that the advertisers, what they pay in the States versus what they pay here is
significantly less, because we are a poor country.
So he was saying, if you move to US for 6 months.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, guess who got his visa?
You, congratulations.
Yes. US citizen, man.
Not citizen.
Donald Trump, I'm coming. For 6 months at a time.
Yeah.
So is that the max you can stay? 6 months?
90 days per visit.
Okay, so then maybe the goal is to do it for 90 days, pump as much content as you can over there, and then get an American audience. And then
no, here's the thing. People, who do you know who's running Google Ads? Do you know any companies in Kenya that are running Google Ads? They're there. I mean, I see Safaricom, I see Equity,
aside from the big ones.
But people are not spending, and and this is the point I keep making about like a good business environment. If the environment was good, people will spend more money on Google Ads, and so our creators will be earning more off of Google.
It also is, in a way, a reflection of the economy in Kenya. So if you look at what we have here, how many billion-dollar companies are there in Kenya?
I think there are 3.
Which ones? Safaricom?
In terms of revenue.
Safaricom? Yes.
I think it's to Safaricom. I left it at Safaricom.
No, Safaricom is a billion-dollar company.
In terms of revenue,
yeah.
Safaricom, KPLC, and KQ.
Correct. No, not even KQ. KQ is not even on that list.
No, it is.
No, I checked recently. It's not. There's Safaricom.
It's dropped off.
There's Safaricom.
Not valuation, revenue.
Billion dollar a year revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Safaricom is there. I don't think KQ is there.
Okay, I will double check.
We'll double check. We'll double check.
Yeah.
Maybe it's there. But the point is, there's Safaricom, KPLC, KQ,
Yeah.
maybe KCB.
No, KCB.
No,
is-
maybe not. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're less than 5, right?
Yeah, there are very few.
If you look at a country
Maybe
like
10 max, because you don't know about
Yeah.
privately held companies, etc.
if you look at South Africa, right, a company like that,
Yeah.
a country like that, they have hundreds of
Yeah.
billion-dollar companies,
Yeah.
and that reflects the purchasing power of the economy, the person.
Yeah.
And YouTube as well over there is significantly much better. in
And
terms of
capital
paying.
investments are higher.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a complete, like the data center landscape in South
It's
Africa.
completely different. But
We-
it's tied to the business environment.
Yeah, it's
Like not fixing the business environment and
Yeah.
expecting the economy to grow is pissing your pants to keep warm as a strategy. It just does not work.
if you what do you call it? If you reach, for example, sorry, I'm getting distracted. I think I've just been conned, by the way,
By who?
because I had spare change and I work at fuel and it's not even reflecting. The lights come back on.
Chief,
Kenya,
you're, just,
man,
you're,
Kenya,
you're,
man,
you're
Kenya.
just driving a big machine.
Kenya, man. I literally had 2K there. I gave the guy that. He worked at like
Yeah,
over
he
the
is-
light. Yeah, the guy's.
For this engine, it should be. And you've been driving like a grandmother. Like,
Yeah, so I need to fuel up basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been conned, Bana.
Whatever.
It's okay. It's fine. It happens.
Every now
It's
and
my
then.
fault. I was on the phone when I should have. I was looking at thumbnails when I should.
It doesn't make a difference. If you're being conned, you're being conned. So I fixed that by fueling at the same gas stations over and over.
Yeah. My question to you was, if not for Kenya, where would you live?
You know, that's a difficult question to answer.
Hmm.
You know, I was watching the rugby sevens in Australia, and Kenyans had their own stand. So, you know, I was thinking, okay, maybe Australia is not a bad place.
It's too far. It's too far.
Yeah, but you want to get away from here. If that's the objective, then being far is a plus. I am not sure. Kenya has its advantages.
Yeah.
It'd probably be the US or something, because you can't live in a tax haven, because living in a tax haven is just hell on earth.
In what sense?
Those countries have nothing else to offer.
So you're talking about places like Mauritius, for example.
You know, so sort of like Ireland, Mauritius, partly, Cyprus, all this like random.
Ireland is a tax haven.
Yeah, it is. Almost all tech companies have their HQ there, and so they invoice the American or the global opcos for use of their IP, and that's how they reduce their tax burden in the individual countries they operate in.
Interesting.
So even like Nike does that. The IP is held in Ireland. The IP is licensed by Nike Ireland to like Nike USA, and so at the end of the year, Nike Ireland will invoice Nike USA for using the rights, and then the profits are sheltered that way. So there are quite a number of interesting ways of sort of sheltering taxes. But anyway, so the many places with tax shelter, like if you were to move to the US, you won't move to Delaware. You'd move to Los Angeles, you'd move to New York, you'd move to somewhere where interesting things are happening.
Correct.
Places where interesting things are happening generally have higher tax rates. So that's the trade-off. So like tax shelters are not fun places to live. So you're generally looking for a place where you can do meaningful work. So for me, well, will most likely be either South Africa, and so Cape Town or San Francisco, which are very similar cities.
Very similar. Yeah,
Even in the
yeah,
hills and everything.
Exactly. I've
or
heard that comparison several times.
Washington, Canada.
Canada's become a shithole, bro.
No, it's not. I think people are
Like where in Canada? You're talking about Toronto and everywhere?
probably like an urban area in Canada will do well.
It's not the same place, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, with the cost of inflation.
Yeah.
Sorry,
thing
the
is,
inflation cost
here
of
is the
living.
reality. Inflation is a perpetual problem for everyone. So the thing is, the idea is not to leave Kenya to go and live as a pauper abroad. If you don't have like something that can actually generate meaningful income,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to live. So like the statistic that came out the other day, Kenyans are the highest earning black people in the US. People of African
Really?
descent, I believe, yeah. They out-earn Nigerians and many other like Native American whatevers. I mean, guys who've sort of shipped into the country from abroad.
Does that make you proud to be a Kenyan?
No, because guys are fleeing. So I'll give you another example. We ignore some of these things,
No,
but
with the sense that the DNA we have basically means we're going to work hard.
no, because the population there has doubled recently. So the challenges are interesting. So I'll give you an example. The UK was involved in mischief in Ireland in the 1860s.
Yeah.
And the Irish ended up going to the US and doing very well for themselves. But you know, Irish population has still not recovered from the potato famine of the 1860s and the mischief that the British pulled.
And what was that? What mischief?
So effectively, the Ireland was like a colony, and the British were taking over their food and leaving the Irish population hungry. So the Irish population immigrated en masse, and the ones who didn't immigrate died, and so the population completely collapsed. So if you look at a chart of Irish population over the 1800s, it just collapses, and to date, it has not recovered. 1860 is 170 years later, going to 200 years, it's not recovered. But you look at how the Irish are doing in the US or any of these other areas, they're doing very well. It's a signal that we're not doing well for our people. We've got these talents that could be used to develop this country, and this talent is leaking. You know, there's that Steve Jobs aphorism, you know, a ship is leaking from the top, our best people are leaving. Yeah.
And I guess it is a reflection of what we think of the country and where it's going. Because if I'm moving to the proverbial greener pastures to make more money, what does home have to offer me? And in essence, you actually see people saying, look, if I go there, even if I struggle as a cleaner in the States, I can actually earn more than I would if I was doing a
I keep
job
saying
or a desk job.
there's no dignity in poverty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality. You get poorer healthcare, you've got a shorter life. Having lower income is directly tied to a shorter life expectancy.
You know when that realization actually hit me about poverty and earning power?
Yeah.
So when I was doing my masters, on the side I was looking for cash, and the only job I could get was being a toilet cleaner. First of all, the Wazungus in Wales, the way they shit. Scrubbing toilets, bro, on your knees, on just doing that manual labor of throwing, you know, the chafu work. But that was the most honorable work I felt. I have never slept better in my life than doing that work. It's hard, it's difficult, but it's so rewarding because you feel like you've done something. And on top of that, they pay you extremely well. Now, at the time, because this was about 2016, the minimum earning was about £6.80 or about £7. And so if you're working 10 hours a day, that's £60 a day. And during the summer, students can work as long as they want. So you're bringing in, let's say, if you're doing double shifts, on average, you're looking at about £600 to £800 a week, £3,200 a month. If you're staying in Wales in a place where I was sharing co-sharing space with someone with £300 each, and decent place, and £25 what you could get in a supermarket at that time. You could. When I came back to Kenya, the same things I bought, I spent 20,000 bob. I was like, Jesus Christ, man. So, in a way, you appreciate. I guess the recommendation is for people again to travel, just so you're exposed, and you know what Kenya has to offer versus what other places have to offer. Correct.
So the thing is, Kenya is not a bad place. But you know, it's. I keep my argument is we are very convenient to compare ourselves to the third world and say, oh, you know, compare us to the Central African Republic, compare us to Burundi or DRC.
Dwarves, giants amongst dwarves.
Yeah. I don't think that's productive for anyone. I think we are a country where the sort of local talents, the citizens have been betrayed repeatedly by the leadership. And we kind of need to acknowledge that there's a problem there, and we've spent years reforming our legal frameworks to deal with the crass accumulation of the political class, and they keep running a step ahead and trying to figure out new ways. So it's like an endless battle to prevent largesse. And it's like once the British got here in the late 1890s, that's been what Kenyans have been involved in on a contiguous 130 year sprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, we were actually, since you mentioned Mzungus coming in and colonialism, we were comparing ourselves to South Africa. It was just an office conversation we were having.
Yeah.
And the notion as to why South Africa is much ahead is because the Mzungus left much later.
No, it's not that simple.
So, like, do you think if they versus 1963 when we gained our independence?
Nah, look at Zimbabwe.
When did Zimbabwe gain its independence?
In the 80s. It's not the case. What you're looking at is social trust. So effectively, what happened, so there's a book by David Halpern. One of the factors that highly correlates to economic development is social trust. So you have, if you segregate communities, and so you start thinking about places like the Nordic countries.
Yes.
There's very high levels of trust in those microcosms, and high levels of trust make it easier for you to do business because you don't have to enforce contracts as much.
Correct.
You'll get paid when you're meant to get paid. The service will be delivered as it's meant to get delivered, etc.
Correct.
Social trust is the lubricant to commerce, because at the end of the day, even a good criminal justice system does not solve for nefarious actors completely. And so what happened is you've got this effectively Dutch people who've got very high levels of trust amongst themselves, and so there was a lot of investment and a lot of economic growth. But the problem was this was built on a system of apartheid, and you had a bunch of people who were completely ostracized. But within that system, there was high trust and high levels of commerce in between that little system.
Yeah.
But it came at the expense of other people's lives. It's the same thing with Zimbabwe or any of these other people. So I would argue that the social trust equation kind of breaks down because there's a whole 80% of the population that you do not trust that you've locked out of the system, and that's not productive. So what is happening right now in South Africa, and why many people are unhappy with the way the world is going, the way the economy is going there, is your power infrastructure that was meant for a few is now being shared by all. Correct. And you don't have enough capital to finance it. Apartheid had a deliberate diseducation of the black people in South Africa. So there are all these other things that make that particular situation a bit chaotic. Now when you look at us, if we had actually been independent earlier, we'd have worked on the infrastructure for social trust. A lot of the chaos you see in Kenya today is the country learning to live with each other.
Yeah.
So if you look at in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of land grabbing. Communities in Kenya were dispossessed. So the Maasai were dispossessed of the land. People in Lamu, people in the coasts, people in the Rift were dispossessed. And so you've now fomented intertribal mistrust. That with this new sort of community that's Gen Z, and later they speak one language, they don't speak the mother tongue, levels of trust have gone up. They are the ones who will actually reap the economic dividends of all of this. So if you remove yourself from sort of the easy bait that people use, which is white people are the ones who are right and black people, no. Once you remove that, yeah. Africa has insane genetic, and there's more genetic diversity within the continent of Africa than there is outside the continent of Africa. So if you combine all the people who live outside of Africa, there's less genetic diversity than there is within Africa. Tallest people are in Africa, shortest people are in Africa. It stands to reason the fastest people are in Africa, the slowest people are in Africa, etc. When you actually start...
Which tribe is the slowest? What are you saying?
No, in terms of running, yeah. You'll find that it stands to reason people like the pygmies,
yeah,
they've got a little height. And so you start looking at that and you're like, okay, it's not straightforward. So
speaking about genetics, it's one of the conversations I was having at the office. Again, these grapevine conversations.
Yeah.
They're like, if a person is lazy,
yeah,
there's a chance they're genetically made like that.
No.
And they can't change that. Now, the argument was
No.
comparing ourselves to dogs.
No.
So if you compare a German Shepherd to those third Parkland's little shits, the ones that they call Poppy and they bite people, it's like the white furry ones. That dog, the German Shepherd, is eager to be a work dog, right? It's born like that. All breeds are like that. Versus that other one, if you throw a tennis ball at it, it'll look back at you. So if you were to look at the human genome, they're saying maybe there's a chance that genetically, if you're structured a certain way to be lazy, you can't change that because that's your genetic disposition.
There I disagree. I know I hide it well, but
if you're a dog, which one would you be?
I used to be a lot smaller than I am now. I went through a period of eating more than I was expending.
No, forget the size. Let's talk about the tenacity, the energy.
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
Human beings are movement machines. Literally, the one thing that is correlated with an increase in synapses in your brain is exercise. So the idea that some people are born lazy is flawed. We get lazy. Even I take responsibility for my weight. I got lazy. I made bad decisions because my brain is, all our brains are wired for pleasure. Because, no, the thing is, things like carbs, etc. were very hard to find when we were evolving. And so I screwed up, and then it's very hard to get back on the wagon. Human beings literally evolved to be persistent hunters. And what that means is we're like, what do you call these dogs? Wild dogs, African wild dogs. We had one of the highest levels of success when it came to hunting, and we evolved by chasing down prey, which is why you find interesting anecdotes like some guys in Turkana who chased down a cheetah that was eating their cattle.
They chased down a cheetah?
Yeah, and they caught it because a cheetah is not a persistent hunter. It speeds up, catches its prey, but it can't actually. Very few animals actually have sweat glands. Well, there's a limited number of. Okay, I don't know. The best way to put it is not all animals have sweat glands, so they can't get rid of heat when they're hunting. And so that's one of the things that human beings can do. They've got very good thermoregulation.
Did you know that?
And so they can actually do persistent hunting.
So some animals don't have sweat glands.
The cheetahs can't run for long.
Yeah. So human beings were literally built to run.
Yeah.
We were born to run.
I just want to go to the petrol station.
Yeah. So we were born to run. So this idea that, no, it's in our genes to do this thing. We, city life, etc. We've messed up our genetics, and not our epigenetics.
So habitual genetics, because the places we stay.
So that's the issue. It's not that if you're tossed into an environment where you needed to be moving around, you'll be fine. So,
which doggy?
I think I'd say if I was to be a dog, I'd say a golden retriever because they seem to operate on vibes and inshallah.
Vish, what dog would you be?
I don't know. Probably a Shiba Inu second.
Shiba Inu.
You're asking me about artificial intelligence, not insemination.
Yes, sorry.
That was a very bad joke, which needs to be sort of.
So the question I actually had.
Yeah.
Now you said insemination. I'm thinking about different things. Sorry, you see how you distracted me?
We've not actually spoken about AI.
We'll speak about AI right now.
Yeah.
So let us fuel, and then we'll talk about AI.
Where's your fuel tank?
I have no idea. I think it's on the left. Yeah, bro.
Where is the fuel tank? Iko hii side?
Yes. Yeah, it's on that side.
See this? There's supposed to be a sign there.
Mshamba, sorry. Kaka, unaweza niwekea 4,000?
Sorry?
4,000 diesel.
4,000 diesel.
Yeah.
Just see, you can. Where's your fuel tank?
There.
See, it points to the right, to the left.
It's
see that
left.
arrow next to the fuel tank?
Hakuna arrow.
There is an arrow, a triangle next to the fuel tank logo.
But yeah, I'm learning new things every day.
It's in almost all cars.
Vish, just come. Do you notice that at the fuel tank, there's an arrow that points where the fuel flap is. If you look at the fuel tank logo.
Oh, the arrow next.
I didn't know that.
Even I didn't.
Is it?
Yeah, it's
So I'm not a mushamba.
all cars Have it.
I hope this guy doesn't. Even I wasn't paying attention to this one as well.
It's okay.
You saw?
Yeah.
But the fuel has gone up, so.
Okay. People are spending their good money facelifting their cars.
Which one is that?
Land Cruiser 200 facelifted to look like a 300.
I've seen that. You think you're buying a 200? Is it buy goods, by the way?
It's buy goods. 8233816. Careful.
Total energy is killer, that's sure. Total energies?
She'll get it. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Golden Retriever. You wouldn't be a Doberman?
No, I'm not a violent person. I'm peaceful.
Shiba Inu.
Which dog will you be?
The one that humps a lot.
It's all of them.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Anyone's leg, humping the leg. Yeah, no, remember, respect. Which is the most religious dog?
I don't know, man.
So, before we actually stopped off at Art Cafe for the coffee, you mentioned about stocks in US and AI.
Yeah.
What do you think about this Chinese AI that's come out? Have you heard of it? Deep Sea.
Yeah, I have. I'm very entertained
Have
by
you
this
used it,
thing.
Fish?
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
good?
Very good.
And it's free.
Unless you ask it about Tiananmen Square or Xi Jinping.
Everything else is good, yeah?
Everything else is good. Like, they pay homage to the CCP. So, like, there was somebody who typed out on that thing. So it said, please give me Roman numerals
Yeah.
with the suffix Jinping. So it was supposed to be I Jinping. I, double I, triple I, etc.
Correct.
When it got to XI, it just stopped. So the Chinese government is heavy on
Still heavily
censorship.
controlling it. But the fact that they were mentioning the cost of them making it compared to what Nvidia has done.
I think people underestimate China. The GDP of China is comparatively lower than the US. But when you adjust for purchasing power parity, it's higher. And I think because certain countries have lower nominal GDP numbers, people kind of discount the talent.
Yeah. Straight up?
Yeah. People keep discounting the talent. So you end up having this situation where you have very knowledgeable people in China who are operating under pressure because they've literally been denied resources. And when people are under pressure, they innovate. That's just the reality. And it stands to reason that you've got 1 point something billion people with limited resources who are very well educated. It stands to reason that they'll innovate when they're pushed to a corner.
I've heard a similar notion with cars.
Yeah.
Chinese cars.
Chinese cars are remarkably better than any other on the planet at the moment.
Apparently, let's say a hypercar that would cost $3-4 million.
Yeah.
The same car, like the Chinese, yes,
The BYD,
exactly, would cost much less.
It's like at $80,000.
And it has all the
features.
All the features you would require.
Yeah.
And it's just lack of exposure because of. Again, why do you? Maybe that's even a good question. Should we turn left? Should we go
we
straight
can turn
in?
left. Because this is now my primary school.
Yeah.
So most of the first 12 years of my education were just this area. You were saying?
So I was saying, why isn't it that China is more widespread? Is it because of US blocking?
No, the US blocking won't be an issue. It's that there's this perception that China is
products are bad.
Yeah, the products are subpar, that they don't know what they're doing, that you're buying fake items. But your iPhone is made in China and you're pretty happy with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you get all sorts of calibers of manufacturing scales. You get supreme quality, you get shit quality.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this dipshit on the opposite side of the road?
Yes, he is. I have no idea why.
Look at this guy.
It's probably a security company. Yes, it's
Oh, it's a
G4S.
security company.
Yeah.
So not dipshits.
Yeah, I think they're just speaking the dogs or something.
By the way, in these areas, is it normally safe?
Well, it used to be safe, so
But it's petty crime, huh?
this is where I went to primary school.
Where is this?
Just put your full lights. Should be Lavington Primary School.
Interesting.
Yeah,
On the right, yeah, this one.
yes, in the 90s.
Do you miss those? Do you miss that period?
I don't. Yes and no. I miss the fact that I had no responsibility. I think that's the key thing. I was a child,
Yeah.
and youth is wasted on the young. And I didn't appreciate what I had as a kid. There are no bills. There are no
Oh yeah.
questions that have no answers.
Everything is taken care of.
Yeah, you know, the first 2 years of your life, even taking a shit is not your business. Like, there's somebody else who's supposed to clean that up. I mean, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, for the first 2 years of your life, that's completely fine. It's what's expected.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as you age, you get more responsibility.
Did you ever have those terror teens? Were you that?
No, my parents did not allow us to be terror anything. They were terror parents. We were not terror kids. As in, we were.
They were strict by the books, right? You
Yeah.
have to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. My childhood was intense from that perspective.
Do you want to talk about it?
Maybe another day. It was.
When you come back for the podcast for the third.
Yeah. It was.
Should I take a left over here?
You can take a left.
Okay.
It was intense. The entire experience was, yeah. There are moments where I was like, okay. And then the other moments I was like, okay, yeah, this was good.
But looking back at it, don't you think that's what made you who you are now?
I'm not sure.
You go straight and then left,
yeah.
or?
We can do straight and then left, or straight and then straight. You can actually, yeah, you can do
And then
that.
it'll go around, right? And then come
Yeah.
back that way.
Yeah.
You'll just guide me.
Yeah. So, you know, it's, I don't know, it's difficult because, you know, the things we experience make us who we are, and I don't know any other life to live. And
Correct.
this is how I was shaped. But looking back, if I was a parent, the decisions I'd not have made. But at the same time, I understand the challenges my parents went through because they were working with the tools that they had. So my parents were basically, they grew up during the emergency and they effectively grew up in more work camps. So they had really tough, horrible childhoods.
Really? Yeah.
And like they carried that trauma into parenthood, and so they didn't have the emotional tools to relate with us. And this is now what I'm realizing as an adult. As a child, I just didn't understand why they were so harsh. I was just constantly puzzled by the harshness. But if you grow up in an environment where you're constantly in a state of fight or flight, where your life depends on strictly following what your parents say,
Yeah.
then when you become a parent yourself, you will enforce these rules because as far as you're concerned, it's life and death.
Yeah.
Because for my parents, when they were growing up, absolute obedience was literally a survival mechanism. It was not just a matter of, you know, it was, you're in this environment that's dangerous and this is how you have to survive and navigate, and this is how you learn to live your life.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I'm glad what you went through.
Yeah.
You went through. Because personally, you're one of my favorite people, bro.
Yeah,
And I've told you this. So, I mean, either way, like, I understand that may be a bit, like,
Yeah.
not for comic relief, but to be honest, I wouldn't have you any other way. If you were to tell me,
Okay.
how would you change Phares?
Yeah.
I'd be like, I wouldn't change him. He's the man that I go to. He's my go-to
Yeah.
counselor. He's my go-to elder brother, my financial advisor. Steak now you have to redeem yourself, yeah?
Yeah. Steak, we need to do something about that.
Because we are sort of, you know, Eric Mutiso, he keeps saying, and it's very true, in hindsight, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
We always look back very fondly. We should have done this differently. We should have done that. I think where you are today, if you're happy, maybe in a way it's sort of part of your journey. It's part of your chapters. It's part of the book that you've written.
We'll see. I mean, the
Phares Kariuki story is not yet over.
It's an ongoing wiki page. So,
but tell me now, as we go into the rest of the year, what's the plan for this year? What are you doing now, business-wise, personally?
With business, I'm just trying to right the ship. So it was a tough year. So we're just going through a period of cost cutting. And sort of just making sure we have adequate cash reserves through the year.
Yeah.
That's mainly it. I have other projects I'm working on. It's a little premature to speak about them.
Yeah. When you're ready.
Well, but yeah, I will.
But personally, any goals, any ambitions? We were supposed to start cycling together, by the way.
I am still on that. In fact, I start next week.
I've been waiting for your message.
Dude.
We're supposed to start next week together. We're supposed to start last week together.
Okay, then we'll do it on Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, but I'm traveling next week.
Sasa, okay. What are you doing Saturday next week? Will you be
nothing.
back?
Yeah, I'll be back.
Let's do Karura Saturday morning.
You're doing with that trainer of yours?
No. I'm just going to carry a bicycle and go there.
You have a bicycle?
Somehow.
Wait, it's not those Anaconda bikes.
No, it's not an Anaconda bike.
We're taking left here?
No, keep going.
Okay. So, okay. Then we'll go Mombasa together, yeah? Because
sure. So long as it is a chase car, I'm fine.
Now the guy that was saying he was going to train us, or train you and me joining by force.
Yeah.
What was he saying? What's the method to the madness to getting us in peak shape? Aside from consistency and not eating Maltesers.
No, it's literally just consistency. There's no other secret. Every day be on a bicycle, and eventually you'll be a good cyclist. Obviously it's not like there's some more finesse to it.
Yeah.
But there's kind of like no shortcut for consistency.
Yeah, that's true. It's just consistency.
You just have to be there every day, and the more you do it, the better it gets.
But these areas are actually pretty good for riding as well, right?
Yeah. But I don't trust our roads for riding. It's not so much the quality of the street infrastructure, it's the fact that we've got crack-addled chimps on the road. So you kind of can't trust anybody on the road anymore.
But it's the fact that you say that the amount of accidents I've been seeing, borders and everything, I'm like, Jesus Christ, now
people
riding on the road.
cannot ride to save their lives.
Take a left a bit, yeah?
Yes.
Nairobi's peaceful at night.
Yeah, it gives you the sense that we're a very civilized people, but
It should be constantly like this.
in reality we are very uncivilized.
No, but I want to thank you.
No, we are actually civilized. It's just that we don't follow rules, so it can be chaotic at times.
Look at people driving during rush hours, especially those aunties in Harriers. But Mr. Kariuki, as we wind things down, I just want to thank you, bro.
No, you're welcome.
It's been great. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
I learned about this fuel sign thing, bro. That's and animals not having sweat glands.
Yeah. How long have you been driving, Bona?
Okay, but unajua nasema fuel tank, lakini sioni arrow. Even Vish just realized that, so I'm not.
Yeah.
Sweat glands, maybe I'm alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then.
Yeah, I read some very random books.
Do you read a lot?
I used to. I don't read as much anymore. I find myself coming off as illiterate.
How many books have you read so far this year?
No, this year 0. But there was a time I was doing like a sizable number a year.
Knowing me, what book would you recommend for me to read? With the struggles I'm going through.
No, that's tricky because it depends on what you want to achieve. Like, what's your primary pain point? Is it professional or is it personal? Is it?
Where does millions lie?
Crypto for dummies.
Crypto for dummies.
I can't help you. I learned about
XRP to the moon.
I learned about Bitcoin when it was cheaper than a latte.
Can I hoot Amma? These are those estates where you hoot the Askari says, "Where watch Jinga." Should I hoot?
Yeah, you can hoot. So
I guess maybe finding your purpose in life.
So, for finding purpose, it depends on what you find. So this is why this is tricky. Different books have had very different effects on me. And some of the books with the widest impact have been the most unexpected.
Yeah.
So, like one of the books I recommend to everyone, the two books I recommend to everyone are When Breath Becomes Air.
When Breath Becomes Air.
By Paul Kalanithi.
Okay.
And Being Mortal by Atul Gawande.
Can you give me that? Actually, I'll take note of this. Maybe we
because
just put up those books over here.
They basically put into perspective the fact that we have got very limited time on Earth. And we need to use this time appropriately and not sort of squander the fixed amount of time we have.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting thing because in the case of Being Mortal, it's basically talking about end-of-life decisions. Atul Gawande's father has cancer. He's passing away, and a decision needs to be made on the sort of treatment he needs. And Atul's perspective is, look, we can't. His dad's perspective was he wants to be able to continue practicing as a surgeon. He's not willing to lose his day-to-day job on the altar of getting better. And I'd not thought about it like that, like work gives meaning to people. And another way to look at it is, and then in the case of Paul Kalanithi, he'd been working towards being a surgeon all his life. And then suddenly he gets diagnosed with cancer and starts writing this book and passes away while he's writing the book. And so as you read the book, his wife takes over because he's dead. And it's just something that I found gave me more perspective on life and managing my time and sort of recentered me.
Sorry, we got cut out. So you were saying that certain books, I guess where you are in your frame of mind at that time,
yes,
some stories can relate to you. It's like that expression saying where this homeless man, he's completely against God. He just has no respect for religion. One day he decides to just go to church just to see what it's about.
Okay, so with some of these books, it's like these things that people say when the student is ready, the master will appear. So some of these books appeal to you because you're at a frame of mind where you can embrace them. So I recommend Founder's Dilemmas to everyone who wants to start a business of any kind.
Founder's Dilemma.
Yeah.
By who?
No Mwasaman.
Okay.
And then I also recommend this book, what do we call it? The Ajax Dilemma.
Ajax Dilemma.
Yeah, it's on conflict resolution.
Okay.
And then Tim Ferriss is fairly good with the 4-hour work week.
Okay.
So I'd also recommend that. So it sort of gives you like a
overarching look at.
Yeah, and then the books obviously by Atul Gawande. Anything by Atul Gawande is basically a must read for me. I've read all his books, all his essays.
Do you read via Audible or you actually get the proper?
No,
books?
I get the books or the Kindle. I don't do Audible. Podcasts are Audible, but book or Kindle.
Do you think reading books through listening helps?
Yeah, it does. It's better than not doing anything. So I'm not one of these people who says you must read it by... you're better off doing Audible versus not actually consuming the material. Because your brain will actually frame it somehow and link it to what you already know.
Well, those are books. I think we'll post them up over here. But Phares, thanks, brother.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you taking the time to come on Midnight
No,
Coffee.
thank you for having me.
Anytime.
Yeah, have a good one.
Anything you want to pitch? Anything you want to say?
No, for now it's just I am not as active on the socials as I used to be. So I'll just, you can just post my Twitter.
I will say this, Director Phil wanted Phares to come on his podcast.
Yeah.
When he met him at the data center with Abel.
They want me to be on the podcast.
Remember he asked you, he's like, would you mind coming on an interview?
Oh my God.
And now if he sees this, he'll be like, this Jama. He says he doesn't do podcasts and he's over here with Sajid.
Yeah, you're an exception. I have not been doing anything press related for a while.
Oh, but I appreciate it, brother.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, guys.
Cool.
This has been Midnight Run episode 2.
Yeah.
Hopefully that guy will come through with a G-Wagon. Come and pick back Phares. But guys, we'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.
Cool, man. Have a good one. So.